the one thing that's interesting, and this is confirmed in a number of sources here, that Donald Trump spends about 8 to 10 hours a day doing this stuff, and he's well briefed on the subject. In other words, they come in, when they finally get to him, he knows all about them, he has a background on the issues, he peppers them with questions, and he can size them up sometimes in minutes. If he likes what he's hearing, if he thinks they're a feisty, independent enough spirit, a quality we're told in both the Washington Post and the New York Times he likes, boom, that person advances to the next round, or it goes. So conversely, the read seems to be, if he's extending the search, expanding the search as he has for Secretary of State, then maybe that's a sign that he has not been impressed with the people with whom he's interviewed to this point. It's interesting, it does make sense, but it tells you a little bit about the way he works, certainly at the Trump Organization and now as the President-elect of the United States, picking his cabinet. Some of those picks do get interesting reaction, like when Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt's name was being mentioned to head up the EPA. He is suing the EPA and has done so a number of times on overreach, he said, on the part of the Obama administration for rules and regulations. They said that we're killing the energy industry, killing his state, and killing jobs. To Heritage Foundation energy expert Nicolas and former Obama EPA staffer Dan Kanninen. Dan, let me go to you on this pick. Is it a given that someone who heads the EPA then must kind of mirror the views of prior EPA heads?
I don't think people expect that the administration mirror the views of another head. I think you can have a disagreement about how you tackle challenges to protect human health and the environment and ensure we have clean air and clean water. I do think it's prerequisite to make sure you have someone who believes that we need to have clean air and clean water as a fundamental mission of the agency. Mr. Pruitt doesn't believe that.
How do you know he doesn't? How do you know he's not trying to find a balance?
His actions have been entirely from the belly of the oil and gas industry. I think we've seen over and over again that he's written letters on official government stationery that were penned entirely by the industry allies that he's been aligned with. His motivation has been, his actions have demonstrated this, to protect the industry, despite the fact that half of the counties in Oklahoma are above elevated risks for cancer based on the EPA's own standards. He's turned a blind eye to that consistently. If Flint happened under a Scott Pruitt administration, he would never have gone there. He wouldn't address it. I think what we would see is someone who instead would rally around the industry.
You don't really know that, Dan. I appreciate your view here. But, Nicolas, one of the other things that comes up is, would he tilt too far the other way? In other words, I can understand his concern for jobs in an industry in an energy-rich state like Oklahoma, but would he go too far the other way and ignore all of this stuff? Or can you balance, or do you think he is the guy to balance environmental needs with our energy needs?
Yeah, I think he's perfect for this position in that it doesn't need to be a balance, is that you can have economic growth and environmental protection, and it can largely be driven by state and local governments, and that's where EPA fundamentally needs to shift. The Obama administration gave this agency a very long leash, and Attorney General Pruitt wants to shorten it, and for good reason. This is an agency that has run amok with massive bureaucratic overreach that drive costs higher, threaten private property rights, and really do little, if any, environmental good. So there's good reason for fundamental reform, and shifting responsibility down to the states is the right way to go.
You know, Dan, the one thing I've noticed, and we always go extremes at the EPA,
sure,
I guess depending on the administration, and in this case, many argue that the traditional fossil fuel industry, or whatever you want to describe it as all environment, no iota concern for jobs, and now it's damaging, whether that extends to coal, oil, anything like that. Do you think the EPA under this administration did that, went too far the environmental way, and too many regulations that did kill industries, that did kill jobs, and were damaging to the economy? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what this EPA did, and this is true under Lisa Jackson, it's true under Gina McCarthy. I think it's been true under Republican administrations in the past. Not the most recent one, and not this one, I don't think, unfortunately. This EPA looked at science and the law passed by Congress, enacted by a president, science that is dictated by peer review and extensive, rigorous testing to apply standards dispassionately about what is best for human health and the environment. And I do agree, it's a false choice to say you can't have both. You can have a robust economy and still protect human health and the environment.
My concern is a robust energy industry, right? I mean, that fracking, to sort of cut back on that, some of the other areas that have been very near and dear for the jobs in Oklahoma, to your point. Do you think that you can go too far in that quest and regulate too much for that goal that jobs are hit?
Well, look, I think there are 1,000 solar units being manufactured every single day in this country, 85% growth this year over last year, which was the highest growth record in that industry ever before. And you have a choice to make. Do you want to protect and help the environment and also protect the economy in the future?
You like solar more. It's your want. But
well, I think if you apply the standards, Neil, you'll find that you can grow the economy and protect the environment.
Okay. Well, what do you think of that, Nicolas? That you obviously express a favorite there, sort of clean industry, if that's how it's called, which is not the fossil fuel industry, which is not oil, which is not coal, which is not any of that stuff, right? So would this pick be more the old way?
I think it would be more of a way that allows the states to regulate the energy industry, and for good reason. The large environmental problems in our country today aren't really federal problems anymore. And what the EPA is doing with things like the Clean Power Plan are promulgating these regulations that are decimating the coal industry, and by the EPA's own accord won't do anything to mitigate global warming anyway. So you have huge cost-benefit analysis where the costs are extreme and the benefits are minimal.
Well, we shall see. You never know. You can always
negligible.
be surprised. Remember, it was Richard Nixon who even came up with EPA. All right, so guys, thank you both very, very much.